o'clock, let's call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to review and approve the minutes of the regular meeting of March 19, 2025.
I'd like to approve the minutes of the special meeting of April 15, 2025.
Second?
Hold on, regular meeting, Bob.
Regular meeting.
Oh, regular meeting, regular meeting.
I'll second the regular meeting.
All right,
Yeah,
all
what
in favor?
What he said.
Okay, that passes. The financial report, Mike?
Sure, so a quick financial update, and there's a couple items I wanted to talk through. So revenues are close to budget, and expenses are under budget due largely to timing. In April, there were payments on 2 outstanding bonds, which contributed to a slight decrease in cash, but cash on hand of $3.8 million is sufficient to service existing debt and fund operations. First item I wanted to talk about here was an update on the Maine paid family leave. If you recall, the state of Maine implemented a public paid family leave program that's going to take effect in 2026, but they're funding it starting 2025. In our budget for this year, the district elected to remit 1% fully from the employee, from the employer rather, portion of gross wages. So we have budgeted 1% of gross wages for funding this program. The state actually gives you an option if you can find a private alternative to the public option to, if it's approved, you can basically forego remitting the funds through the remainder of 2025. So right now we've remitted the funds for the first quarter of 2025, and because we have this private plan approved, we don't have to remit anything until the plan becomes active in May 2026. In addition to that, the rate we're paying through Unum, which is our private alternative, is charging us 0.804% of gross wages versus 1% from the state alternative. So with this plan approved, we're saving approximately $13,000 in premiums just for what would be paid in through the rest of this year. And then we're also going to save a little bit next year when we actually start remitting into the plan, because we'll be at that 0.8% instead of 1%. The other item I wanted to update you on is a propane bid. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just to make sure I'm clear on this, so we paid into the state plan for Q1, right? Because everyone is required to do that. But because we're selecting an approved optional plan, we're making no payments Q2 through Q4, right? Because in effect, the provider's capitalizing this themselves as opposed to the state plan, which they were getting the money for the year to capitalize the plan, right?
Exactly.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah, great.
And we did apply for and receive an exemption from making those payments.
Right, yeah.
Yep.
Part of that was we had to prove that we had the private coverage.
Exactly, yep. So the other item I have here is the Maine Power Options propane bid. So Maine Power Options is an affiliate of the Maine Municipal Bond Bank, and they reached out to see if we wanted to participate in their bid this year for fuel costs. We determined that we actually own the vast majority of our propane tanks, and there would be an opportunity to save a little bit of money if we went with this bid. We were under no obligation to commit to anything throughout the bidding process. In the past year with Dead River, we paid an average of $1.90 a gallon for propane. A bid came through through the Maine Power Options for Frederick Brothers Oil and Propane for $1.46 a gallon. We vetted them and verified that they have clients similar to us and they can handle our needs. So we'll save a little bit of money there in propane costs going forward. We have a supply contract with them from July to June of 2026.
The rate is fixed.
What's that?
It's fixed.
Fixed, exactly, yep. Yep. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
So ballpark 6,500 is not a small sum.
No, it's
is it?
not, yeah.
And that's just on the water side, so there's additional savings for sewer.
Yeah. Any questions? Thanks, Mike. Okay, this is the opportunity for public comment. I see we have members of the public here. You'd like to say your name and why you're here. Eager to hear from you.
I'm Jennifer Byron. I'm participating today. I've been in contact with Mike a couple of times about a vault that appeared to be across the property line of my property at 487 Court Street. Recent drawings, when were those done, Mike?
So, Jennifer's been reaching out. We've been talking for probably a little over a month now about this. So today, I met with Davis Land Surveying, because I was looking to get an estimate from them to do a survey, if that is something the board wished to do. In meeting with them, last year, they did a survey for the Stable Ridge development. They were cleaning up some of the property lines on that. And in order to complete that survey, they had to find all of the district's property markers for the Gulfville Reservoir, which abuts that lot. So they actually just gave over the information. They didn't charge us for that. They gave us the survey, which does outline our property lines. They did find previously conducted surveys. The one that I printed out and brought over here was from 1999 when they upgraded, I believe the city built their communication tower up at our reservoir. They surveyed the property before placing the tower there. So that's the copy that's over here is from that survey. But you know, they did find in there exactly where the property line is. It is kind of vague. When Jennifer first reached out and we looked at it, it looks like our vault is, it's right, it looks like it's right on their lawn, but as it turns out, our property does run, 12 and a half feet off the corner of the house, and the vault is on district property, so we're not.
It's all on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, according to that survey,
Yeah.
it does look that way. The town map that's online
Right.
appears differently.
And that adds to the confusion, because when she came in, first thing I did was I get on GIS, I'm like, oh, look at that, it looks like it's on your property. Well, that's not good, I can't imagine that we would have done that and not done the homework. I actually wound up reaching out to Norm Lamy, he was the superintendent here, back when that vault was installed, and he actually was like, oh, I remember putting that in. We set the property, we set the markers for the vault, we located the property pins, we met with the homeowner, and it was clearly on our property, we proceeded with the work. And I'm like, okay, well, because I couldn't find any paperwork on any easements or considerations or any surveys when it went in, so there must have been significant evidence that we didn't need to do those things at that time, but it isn't completely clear now, so that's why it was a little confusing for us. Anyways.
Because I abut there, and, what, are you using the survey they just did a couple months ago?
I'm not using any particular survey. The one that's printed out right here is from 1999 that was done for that tower. And he gave me that printout showing our pins, the layout of our vault and our access road, which was all mapped as part of that survey.
Okay.
So I did not use the specific
You didn't
survey for
use the
Stable
Stable
Ridge,
Ridge?
no. Because he had to correct that one, I guess. That one was incorrect.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Yeah.
point out, was they did it, and they just came back a couple months ago,
They had to correct
because it all depends on where you drive off from, because I abut, right? Your northerly boundary
Yeah,
has
abuts your property,
has
yeah.
3 lines,
Yeah.
which is why they had to come back to fix that. So he's using the same pins as this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, great.
Is it possible to get a copy of that most recent revision?
Yeah, he didn't offer that one up to me. I don't know if it's been finalized or printed yet, but he just told me they wrapped up that work, that they had to update that. And again, it's a survey for that neighboring lot, but they reference our pins for the survey, which confirms that
Yeah, because they're joint.
this is correct, right? So, yeah, as soon as that's published, I'll gladly share a copy.
Gotcha.
And I think I emailed you this one today.
I
And
wouldn't know.
yeah, I sent this
Work
to you
though.
when I got this around noon today. And if you
Okay.
want this copy, you're welcome to take that.
No, if it's in my email, that's fine.
Okay.
So I guess my only outstanding concern with that, if the vault isn't on the property, there's been kind of a long-standing agreement that parking space that is on your property has been used for my building, but we don't have any sort of agreement on that, and that's a little concerning to me.
Yeah, so, in addition to the vault, when they installed the vault, they installed a couple of parking spaces, which again, I wasn't aware that they were our parking spaces until going through this exercise. But as it turns out, we installed those spots so that we could park when we're servicing the equipment in the vault. It's been well known, we've never had an issue with it. We do know the people that live in that building park in those spots. I thought it was their parking, but as it turns out, it's on district property. Like I said, it has never caused an issue before. I don't know what everybody wants to do with that. I don't know if we could give you an easement for that, because if we ever had to do anything there,
Sure.
then we would be restricted for that. But, I know I'm not gonna tell anybody not to park there unless we have a specific project where we need to get in there and do something.
Sure. In which case, obviously, we'd be more than willing to clear that out,
Right.
So I would suggest that you get some type of agreement, because when I got the minutes, I went back and looked at the aerials, and that wasn't there in '73. The next aerials were '98, and those parking spots were there then.
94 is when they were put in. yeah.
Okay, so I have no problem with them using them, but the problem you might run into is that they may have prior use easement over an extended period of time from using those. So it would probably be better if the water district and the property owner came to some agreement between them about using that and the conditions under which they could use them.
Okay. I'll work with E&P body, draft that up, and get you over a copy of that
Okay,
for consideration.
awesome.
Animal defense.
No, we already talked about that one, we're all set.
Are you all set?
Yes, we are, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Dennis, yes. I want to just comment briefly on something I mentioned last month, which is the Watershed Protection Commission commencement of the public briefings and the sequence for inspections. This is to begin with Area 1 of the 5 areas around the lake. And there was some delay in getting this initiated due to some changes in staff at the city planning staff and otherwise, and getting some letters out. For whatever combination of reasons, the first briefing session for Area 1, which is the area around the intake pipe and up to East Auburn, is going to be on June 9 at the public library. And there's a number of inspectors who have signed up to be on a list of available people, and you can use somebody else if you want to, and there's a reimbursement figure that's been agreed upon, and so the procedures seem to be in place. Now the next step is to inform the public, and we'll have to see how that goes.
All right, thanks. I guess we can close the public comments. All right, add activity report.
All right, so getting into the activity report, we're fairly busy. Usually construction season starts ramping up around then. For mains, you can see we did have a leak on our 16-inch cast iron cement line water main over here, 177 Turner Street, as well as we did activate our seasonal main on Taylor Pond. In so doing that, we did have a couple leaks that we had to repair there.
You have a thing about a service getting hit by a contractor. Was that a marked service?
So, that was a marked service, but the way that it ran, we couldn't mark that out. So what we did was, we responded to that, the contractor kept the excavation site open while we made repairs to that. And then moving on to gates, as you can see, if you spend any time in Auburn, you will notice that Center Street construction has begun there. Yes. So we spent a lot of time over there lowering our gates. I'll touch more on that as we get into project update. Hydrants, busy working on hydrants, getting repairs done to our hydrants. All of our hydrants have been repaired up to this point, except for one over at Roy's off Washington Street. It's just in a tough little traffic triangle there, so we need to come up with a plan how to control that traffic, plan that repair. Moving on, we did have a couple new services. One meter was installed, one meter was not installed yet. They were not ready for the meter. As you can see, coming out of the season, and typically coinciding with our meter reading, we have service box repairs that kept us busy through the month of April. Meters, nothing really standing out there.
Well, Matt, can you jump back to services?
Yep.
The very last one, 122 Taywood Road, repaired leak on service line. Now, that's the service line between our main line and the property, house, or whatever, the building, right?
Correct.
So that, did we do that for free, or did we have to charge them? Because if they did
No,
that on
that-
their own, they have to pay for it.
That was on our side, Bob.
That was on
That
our
was on
side.
our section of the water main.
Okay, I said,
I
okay,
mean,
good,
the service line. Yeah.
thank you.
Station checks, a little light on station checks, however, we did maintain at least 2 site visits to the stations to inspect those. The month of April was chock full of vacations amongst many different staff here, but we were able to get to 2 station checks throughout the month for each facility. We did have 2 water quality calls. We did have 1 complaint for dirty water. We investigated, did not find dirty water. And then we did have a complaint as far as chlorine smell and odor in our water. I personally went out to the site with one of our staff members. The chlorine levels were within normal operating range. We checked at the faucet as well as the nearest hydrant. Some people, this particular resident, just moved here several years ago. Before that, she was on a well water system. My experience, some people have a sensitivity to chlorine, and they have different thresholds to that. So just advised her it's within normal operating range, and to seek, if she wants, consult a doctor and talk to a plumber to have a chlorine filter installed, so that she has better experience with the water. Laboratory, everything's normal there. Same as the flow and demand in the system. Weather, it's pretty cold and rainy. Hoping for summer to show up soon. I'm sure we all are. And dig safes, you can see the volume of dig safes starting in January, going to March as they start ramping up again, indicative of construction season starting. We did have 4 duty foreman calls, a couple of hydrants, 1 for a fire call. Questions as far as the activity report?
Under activities, the last thing, Matt?
Sorry, Bob, what was that?
The last thing on the last page.
Other activities, yep.
5th one down, locates. This is something we do above and beyond what DigSafe does.
What do you mean by above and beyond what DigSafe does? So these are the amount of hours that we go out to locate per the DigSafes. Yeah. And under our other activities, you may have noticed that I started including other things where we spend a portion of our time, such as maintenance of vehicles, operator training, equipment maintenance, inventory, locates, and then the volume that we do facility maintenance and repairs to reservoirs.
Right?
Any other questions? All right, I'll make the project update. Talked about the OT project, and I believe the last month that we met, we talked about the Mr. Manhole and the Mr. Water Valve attachment that comes with Mr. Manhole. Going into the season, Mike and I were a little bit nervous as far as the volume of valves as well as sewer manholes that we had to adjust amongst other capital projects that we have going on. So we knew we had to explore alternatives to help, one, with efficiency as well as reduce the manual labor on our staff. This particular DOT project, we adjusted 85 water valves along with 39 manholes. And on average, the way that we usually do it, it's very manual intensive. It would take about a day to do 7 to 10 gate boxes, as well as a day to do 4 to 5 manholes. So looking at those, doing those calculations based off those ranges, So the water valve should have taken us anywhere from 8 to 12 days. And the manholes themselves should have taken us anywhere from 8 to 10 days. We're able to do the 85 water valves and the 39 manholes within 10 days. So you do the math on there, we averaged a reduction in the amount of time we spent out there of 6 to, check my math on this, 6 to 12 days.
That's for 2 men, correct?
No, this actually takes a whole chain of operation. This actually took up most of our operations. So for a manhole itself, it's quite the process. You have to go out there, you have to jackhammer it out, then you have to remove the frame cover, all the asphalt, then you have to blade it, patch it over. So we had an assembly line going. The Mr. Manhole would go, it would cut out the valve, they'd pull it, 2 people would stay behind, take care of all of the asphalt and the valve box itself, and then they would put in patch, or plate and then patch.
Do we know what the cost is per man hour for?
We're not down to that level, we could look into,
We could get it pretty quick.
yeah.
Yeah, so,
Because you know where I'm going with this.
yeah, I'm looking at these numbers and it basically it says we can do twice as much work with this device. Is it the same size crew?
Yes.
Because I think that's what Tim's
Yeah,
getting
same
at
size
as
crew.
well, right?
Yeah.
It's not just, can you do twice as much work, what's the man? So basically, it's half the man hours to do the same work
Right.
with this device,
Yep.
in
Yeah.
general.
But you've got to be, I mean, I don't want to put numbers on the table because that's wrong, but we have to be 50, mid-50s per hour per person, all inclusive
So
per.
it saved $28,000, that's not accounting for traffic control,
Right.
police detail, and the other stuff. Just the man hours, 10 days off is
So you
$28,000.
saved about $28,000 without including any of the extra.
All the other stuff.
Okay. And we're talking about a $60,000 device. And the longevity of this device is 3 years, 4 years, 5
I
years?
would think 10 to 20 years anyways.
I would,
But 60,000's for the Mr. Manhole, but what about, there's a cost, we rented something, right? A Bobcat or something. So what's the cost of that?
So the Bobcat cost, I think we were renting that for about $1,200 a week.
yeah.
So let's say we buy one, right? That's what Tim's getting at. If we
Yeah.
buy a Mr. Manhole and we buy the piece of equipment, but it's not $28,000 a year, because that's just this one job that
Mm-hmm.
you saved on it. So it's got a pretty quick payback.
An incredible return on investment.
So the way
And on top of that, we have no issues with workers' comp.
Right.
and
Exactly.
And back issues. and
Those things
The
I,
guys coming back just horribly grumpy because of what they were doing.
glad you said that, they came back at the end of the day with a smile on their face, they were fine, they're happy. 2 years I've been here, I've never seen them come back from adjusting manholes or gates and be in a good mood.
We wouldn't dig for a
It's
water
not a
main.
joke.
We wouldn't dig for a water main with a shovel, so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the way the sewer board left this is, the way we put this, we've got $200,000 budgeted on the sewer side to adjust sewer manholes. We've got, I forget the number, I could look real quick, what we have for water. They basically said, if you can buy this equipment for
Right.
what we have budgeted this year, go ahead and do that, there's no decision needed.
Yeah.
I believe we can buy this equipment, do all the work we need to do. We're gonna rent the skid steer when we need it, when we need to use this equipment. There's no problem getting all the skid steers. There's 4 places in Auburn that rent them between here and Lewiston. So we're just gonna rent the skid steer, buy the Mr. Manhole, and we'll still come under budget for both districts. So that's our plan.
Yeah.
Because looking at the cost of this.
Well, you probably actually have a surplus.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so looking at this, we had a large volume. So looking at the skid steer, that wasn't something that we're including in this. We thought it'd be best to hold off on that, rent that when we need it. That way we're not, taking on the true cost of that. We don't have an asset depreciating. We also aren't taking on maintenance costs while the equipment's sitting there. But we do see the value, and you see that, and it costs us $12,000 to rent this equipment for a month.
Mhm.
Okay, we just saved $28,000 on half of the adjustments that we have to do this season. So that's just in labor.
Mhm.
So that's why we think it's good to move towards, or have that discussion of purchasing that
The
equipment.
two of you seem to recommend it hands down.
Yeah,
I would just say, pull the trigger and do it.
Yeah,
That's the plan.
all right.
Yeah,
So I did just receive an email back from them. I haven't gone through the numbers, what that looks like. But my last conversation is they would take that rental fee that they were gonna charge us and apply that to the purchase of the equipment. So,
Bonus.
yeah,
that's what you said last week.
right.
Now remind me, what's the capital cost of that equipment?
it's 55,000 and then there's some other attachments, so right around 60 grand
Yeah.
in total.
Isn't there a new purchasing policy that you need an approval by the board for something over 50,000?
Unless it's sole source or proprietary.
Yeah.
I don't believe there is anything else that makes, and we tested out the equipment
Yeah.
from Public Works. It was much different. It was more of what you would see with a typical hole saw cutter. It had issues with cutting as deep as this one does, had issues with depth of pavement, cutting through that, as well as the pavement getting into our structures.
Yeah.
Because the opening was, well, there was nothing to block.
So we do or don't need a motion?
I think formally we do, but I mean, it's like, I look at it as we've got so much budget for the job and we're gonna come out in so
Well,
much
yeah,
of the
it's not,
budget.
it's not budgeted for equipment.
Right,
Right.
right, so yeah,
So,
I think a motion-
so I would move that we authorize the superintendent to transfer money from that project to capital equipment to purchase the Mr. Manhole and associated attachments.
Great. Is there
Second that motion?
some discussion?
Yeah, to be clear, the sewage department's going to fund half of this?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
That's all I needed to know.
Any other discussion?
Does that mess up your numbers on the project?
Between the two districts, we have $400,000 budgeted this year for manhole and gate valve adjustments. So, yeah.
All in favor? Unanimous? Great, thanks.
all right, and then just a few other things, sorry. We did activate telephone seasonal main. This was the first year in some time that we did that without our recently retired water operator, Randy Holmes. And we were able to activate that in the deadline of the May 1st activation set by PUC. Lauren Ave water main replacement. Oh, go ahead.
Before you leave that one, did you get any complaints this year about people wanting permanent service?
We did not get, not that I know of,
Not
Mike.
formal, but that always, if you go to Taylor Pond, that's gonna come up.
Well, I went and met with all
Oh, okay.
out there last summer about getting them money to fund this.
Yeah.
And only 2 people that are on the seasonal water would even come to the meeting and the rest weren't interested. So the two that were pushing it, that were here before,
Yeah.
told me if nobody's gonna participate, then, so I was just curious.
Yeah, we didn't get any formal.
Yeah, okay, then, yeah,
Well,
because you couldn't even get into the meeting if it was free. So,
Sure. Glad you mentioned that, Jeff. I wasn't aware of that. So what we'll do is we'll start looking at, upgrading and replacing that main.
yeah, I don't see any path forward right now. If you can't get the people that are using it to wanna participate in the process, then
Right.
the ones that were really interested in this told me, look, I can't get my neighbors to come to the meeting, and we'll just work with the seasonal water.
All right, thank you for that. Lauren Ave, we are moving forward with the water main replacement project over there. We did notification to the neighborhood that construction would be going on. And we recently set up temporary main, and we are setting up the services to the temporary main, and we're anticipating digging and relaying main starting Tuesday.
Is Unitil changing their pipes in there too?
So what we did with that, we ran into a conflict with that. And we went out, met them in the field, one of their field supervisors. In the timing of them to be able to come and offset their main, off of our main, that would have messed up our schedule. We would not have had time to wait. So Mike and I had a discussion, and we talked to the city. Our plan right now is to abandon the section of main in place that they are piggybacking off of our main. We're gonna offset ours. We're gonna abandon that segment, which is 350 feet. In return, they're gonna pay for the paving costs within that segment. So we're gonna realize a savings of about $7,000 in pavement. The city's okay with that plan, so that's what we're doing moving forward. That way we can get to the rest of our capital projects.
We're gonna be using the standard blue plastic, half-inch thick plastic pipe that we use?
Bionex, yep. As well as one last thing, spring flushing has started. That started, this just past month, notification went out. And we are moving forward with that. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you. New business?
Our new business, hey, it's Loring Ave again. Why is this under new business? I did want to bring to your attention, originally this project was to go out to bid this spring. As Matt said, the city's looking to reconstruct that section. There were some delays. I think there was a lot of community discussions regarding Loring. Inevitably, that project didn't get bid till much later, and there's a potential that the reconstruction work won't actually occur this year, it will occur next year. So we were faced with kind of a split-minute decision. Do we push our work off till next year and put it as part of the contract to bid with the city's work? Or do we just bite the bullet and do the work ourselves this year, get ahead of the schedule so that we're not part of that project? Taking it on ourselves, we do incur increased paving costs. If you do it as part of the city, basically the district doesn't pay to pave the road. But where we're doing it on our own, we need to repave after we construct. Good news is, we just offset half our paving costs. Unitil's gonna pay that, because their gas main is installed directly on top of our water. So I just wanna bring this to your attention. I feel like we can still come in under budget, what we budgeted for Loring Ave, but it's just gonna put us closer to that number. If we do go over, it's gonna be because of the increased paving costs. But we just feel like if we don't do Loring Ave, we're gonna have to we're gonna have to shift our funds, find another street to do, re-notify people. We'd already done all the prep work, ordering the materials and the pipe and the valves for Loring, so it's like, let's just proceed, and we don't have to worry about being part of that other project next year, and we'll be ahead of the game. So we kind of had to make that decision on the fly, but I just want you to be aware of that.
And also one thing, that factored in that decision making is sometimes the city's following through with these projects, and sometimes their plans change. It's good for the district to be in a position to have projects ready to go and be able to be flexible if things change as well. So that's why while it's additional pavement costs, I think when you look at having that flexibility and us being able to make informed decisions as far as our next CIP projects, I think it's worth that cost. And honestly, I think if you looked at some of the potentially soft costs or hidden costs, it's hard to tabulate as far as us with project conflicts with us going and doing it or having a contractor doing it. I think we potentially would be a push on the pavement.
So just to follow up, Mike, that was bid. I
It
remember
was, but it
seeing
didn't
come
get bid
through.
in March
Yeah.
or February like it was originally
Right.
planned. It didn't get bid till the spring.
And I don't remember seeing the award, but when they had the addendum, there was a question in there about whether they had to do it in 25 or 6, and they left it to the contractor. So do we know for certain they're doing it in 26?
No, but we were told, that's what the city informed us, is that this could get done next year and not this year.
Right.
It sounds like, I don't know if it's been awarded yet, but it
It
seems
hasn't.
like everybody knows who's bidding on it and who's gonna get it. And they've already told them that, you know, we may start a piece of it, but we're not gonna, certainly not gonna finish it this year. So that's.
It's like 8 people at the, 8 companies at the pre-bid.
So I guess that's still to be determined, but the good news, I mean, we're gonna start out there next Tuesday, and we'll be done before they ever mobilize. The
Right.
good news is, if they mobilize before we pave, well, then we don't have to pave.
Right.
And
Yeah,
then this will all be for naught, but,
Is it,
in the instance they don't go out there this year,
is it both sections of Loring Ave?
no,
Just
the South Main Street
one
side.
that goes from South Main to
Straight,
Greenwood?
Yeah. The other section, that is original water main, early 1900s, on the South Main Street side. On the other side, it was replaced in the 50s, so it's still older pipe, but it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't like super old, so should be good for a while longer.
Yeah, and one other thing, Jeff, you know, looking at our experience last year, you know, looking at Darien, looking at Fourth, you know, we wanna get our CIP projects done. And the impact of operation of going and setting up and then having to remobilize, you know, it impacts the workforce.
Sure.
You know, they get a little bit frustrated, and then it also impacts, it puts strains on, you know, the timing of the projects and deliverables. So while they may get to some of it this year, we thought it would be best, it would be worth the investment to move forward with the project.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I think we're good.
Next.
Yeah, meter replacement cost projections, Mike's got a handout he's gonna pass around, we were still working on this at the time the packets went out, so we didn't include it. Again, this is something we've been talking about, you know, we're just trying to project out what we have for cash available to us here at the district, what it's gonna cost to replace all the meters, and how we could potentially plan to fund the replacement of all the water meters. So everybody's got this. Mike, you wanna go for a rundown on this?
Yeah, so, like Mike was saying, essentially, we know we have a lot of cash on hand, and we're just trying to figure out how much of it can we actually spend on meters. So I took our budget, net income from the budget's $947, subtracted out the debt service for 2025. I looked at our capital and equipment budget of $2 million, subtracted out what we've spent so far, so we are on the hook for an additional $1.3 million in capital costs this year. So our net shortfall for this year is $1.1 million. And in April, we have $3.8 million in cash. So our available cash is $2.6 million. Now, if you look down further, this is what it's going to cost us to get up and running with MediaLink and with the new meters. So there's the implementation fees of $1.8 million, the annual fees of $60,000, and then meter installations. We recorded $130 a meter, and we have 6,400 meters, so that's where that comes from there. And we have to be mindful of we have to keep 100 days cash and liquidity, or liquid. And we also have the Lakeshore Drive culvert project, which is on the horizon. It's possible we could be on the hook for $750,000 liquid cash there before we get reimbursed by a grant. So we need to at least maintain $1.4 million roughly in cash. So in order for this to work, I think we would need a $1.5 million bond issuance just to fund the actual installation of the meters. We're expecting there to be roughly a 10% increase in efficiency once we get all the meters replaced. So that would be a ballpark of $400,000 increase in revenue. That would more than offset the cost for the $1.5 million bond issuance. But that's what it kind of looks like right now, if anyone has any questions.
If we were to bond, what would you determine? Or what would you go?
I would have to look at the different rates, but I guess I would push for a 10-year term, especially if we could cover that with the
Yeah.
money gained from the efficiency. Try to go for as short a term as possible. The only other options we could run, and again, we're not looking for a decision on this tonight, we're just trying to float the options, keep the discussion going. I would hope as we get towards this fall, towards the end of the year, we determine a path we want to go so that we can budget accordingly and make this happen, you know, for 2026. The only other option we could run, and we could run scenarios on this so we could look at next month, would be to do it in a more phased approach, raise the rates, bring in the revenue, replace the meter with basically cash from the rate increase. So those are the two ideologies you could use for how do you fund the meter replacement. You bond it, do it all up front, use some cash, use the bonded money, replace the meters, pay for the bond payment with your increased revenue, or raise the rates, get money set aside, start replacing meters, but you probably have to do a more phased approach it'll take you, longer, maybe 2 to 3 years, that route. But we can run numbers on that and see what that looks like, but.
Is it still, I'm sorry, Jeff,
Oh, you go.
is it still consideration for a pilot program this year?
We budgeted this year $75,000. We did select the vendor, we went through that bid process, we're starting to install meters now. We're gonna be putting up a tower, so we'll have AMI, we'll have, those meters that we put in this year will be on the new system and in good shape there, so.
So, in full disclosure, as you know, my brother-in-law works for the Lewiston Water Department, sewage, whatever. Apparently, they're going with the same
Yes.
system that we are.
Yep.
Is there any advantage to us having an agreement to share tower services in case one of our towers goes down?
Yeah, there's advantages in a couple of ways. Our tower that we're gonna be putting up on our antenna up at Goff Hill, we could read 80% of Lewiston from that tower. We need 4 antennas in Auburn to read all of Auburn. One of those antennas reads 80% of our system, and it reads 80% of Lewiston. So they could put their antenna at our location, use our repeater, and, realize some savings there. The actual antennas, towers, they're not actually a tower that goes up, it's a little antenna that goes on a pre-existing tower. They cost in the neighborhood of, I think it's like $30,000 each. So they could realize that some savings there by utilizing that. But they're actually different frequencies, different radio frequencies, so our antenna won't read their frequency. But they could put their antenna at this location and save on the repeater. So there is some, and I have floated that, I've been in discussion with them. Yeah.
Okay.
We could really realize some savings if we're succinct on the meter installations. Getting that good bid price of, it looks nice if you put it out to a contractor to install 6,500 meters. It looks really nice if they've got Lewiston's 11,000 meters to put in on top of ours, and then all of a sudden, if you get a price of $90 a meter, that could be huge. So that's something we're really trying to, that's the bigger fish I'm trying to wrangle to see if we're gonna be on the same schedule as them. It'd be nice if, maybe we even do that under one contract, like put in our meters, put in their meters, we both agree to the price, charge me for each of my meters, obviously. But that's what I'm really eyeballing.
So you're a very optimistic fellow. Given some of our challenges we've had relative to agreement. So I think it's a great idea, Mike. I would set a date and say, in order to do this, I have to have this done by this date, and if not, we're going down the road by ourselves, because it's often not the desire, it's the execution on their side. So that would be my advice.
No,
Pursue it,
you're spot
but
on. No.
say when I'm bailing and doing this on my own.
I'm silently already ahead of you.
Okay.
I did not, I did have that option to wait to discuss with them to share a tower. I said, no, we're putting in our tower. If they want to share on our tower.
Yeah, we can work that out. And
It's
the
up to
bigger
them.
thing though is the meter installation.
Right.
So just set a
That's the
date
bigger fish,
internally that you got, and then I would be in favor of doing the bonding. I think that's a way cleaner way to do this.
Yeah.
And we're gonna talk later about goals. I think for this project, you wanna avoid rate increase entanglements and deal with that all separately. And then the last question I have is the amount that, Mike, that you provided, we had a discussion about revenue from sewer. So is that in here or not yet?
No, it's not. So one thing that we've been working with the sewer board on is right now the sewer district pays the water district $50,000 a year plus half of any of the utility billing software because they utilize
Right.
that. So we've been working with other utilities in the state, particularly sewer utilities, and what they pay their water counterparts for this type of service. The model that we liked the best was basing the fee from one entity to the other on depreciation of the meters. So we presented that to the sewer board last night. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, that would increase their payment to the water district from $50,000 a year, 60 say with the fees, to like
130 something.
130 to 140.
Yeah.
So we would be taking in that additional revenue from the sewer
Right.
district.
And what was the sewer trustees' feedback on
No comment, and they didn't seem to be objective to it. My goal is to have them amendable and agreeable to that by the end of this year, so it's budgeted for 2026.
that? Okay, yeah,
And I
that sounds great.
feel like it's projecting to do that.
Yeah, okay.
And that would meet your goals.
Yeah,
So when would you need the bond?
I would probably, if this is the route you guys
When we
wanna
need the
go,
bond
we will start to research the fall issuance, when the deadline to apply for that. If not, we'd probably have to apply in the spring of next year. So we will look at that, bring that back as the next option, next
Yeah, and just remember, you gotta build in 30 days
Yes.
to go through the
process.
process with the council.
Okay.
So before we leave this, I had a couple of questions.
Sure.
So you're going to do a pilot project this year? How many meters do you think that will yield?
It's about 250 meters.
Okay. So, and you're thinking maybe you're gonna get 10% greater revenue?
That's been the industry number that they've given us and what we've been told.
So to these customers, it's gonna look like their rates increased?
Yes.
Good pilot project to see how that bounces off people. You know, I was just thinking public perception, if you get some kind of
Yeah.
bump, then maybe you wanna, before you deploy a full thing, you wanna have some public messaging or something like that around it.
I will say, yeah, you're absolutely right, and we should absolutely work on that, and we'll start cracking on that. One thing, we've already started installing these new meters. They are far more advanced, and I can't stress that enough, than the previous meters that we're using. They do more things than measure water in so many ways. So one of the first meters we installed was at a location that was having issues with high reads. The way we previously read the meters, they're a Book 80, so that's a commercial account. It was an apartment building, and we read those every month. So we read it at the end of the month, and whoa, they got a $2,000 water and sewer bill because it had extremely high usage. We met with them, we went into the property, they're not using any water, where's all this water going? And the finger pointing
This
starts.
is with the new meter?
So, no, this was before we put the new
Before,
meter in,
alright,
so this is kind of the backstory.
Yeah, okay.
They're having these really high usages. They hired a plumber, we went in there, nobody's really finding what's going on. So they started saying, well, it's your meter. So, we took the meter out, we tested it. When we took that one out, we put one of the new meters in. We installed it. It was in there for 1 week. These new meters, again, we can pull lots of data from them. They can show you a flow report of every minute of every day. And you can see clearly every evening, I don't know if it's a disgruntled tenant, somebody's opening that thing wide open, and you can see to the quarter of a gallon per minute, the amount of water flow that's getting turned on in the evening hours. Basically, I would assume somebody's turning on a faucet and then going to bed, and then when they wake up in the morning, they turn it off. So when the landlord's coming by during the day, there's no water running, what's going on?
Utilities are included in the rent in this building.
So I don't know that, I don't wager into that. But we were able to print that report off and show it to him, like, look, this is what's going on, and he's like, oh my, I gotta, all right, thank you. You know, but this is something we wouldn't have before. I wouldn't have this information, but we're gonna have this throughout the entire city. Everyone, if you're a ratepayer, you'll be able to get in, log in, create an account. You can, if you wanna play around on an app on your phone, you can see what you're using at any time, you know, and it's real-time data. It's not like you have to wait for us to read the meters at the end of the quarter. You could set up an alert. If my water bill goes over this, send me an alert. You could set that up.
Fails.
Exactly. You know, your toilet starts having an issue, landowners, property owners, you could set this up. So, you know, that's the biggest thing I hate doing is, oh, I'm so sorry, but your bill's $2,000. You know, sometime last month this happened and the water went through the meter, it went down the sewer, I can't give you a rebate. It's hard to deliver that to people, but now we're gonna have a tool we can combat it, so.
Good.
Yeah, so.
All right. That's awesome.
Yeah, and the reads, the volume of water on the reads of the new meters are gonna be much more accurate than the current old meters.
Yep.
And how old are they ballpark?
20 to 15 years.
Yeah, and the older they are, the
More wear.
less water they read goes through them, more goes through without them reading it.
Right,
Right,
correct.
I like it that way.
Come on in.
Yeah, if you're a customer, you would.
The only
sorry, I'm late. I thought it was 5:05 was the meeting.
Oh,
Don't feel bad, Dennis and I did the same thing at our first meeting, we showed up at 5 o'clock, so.
Okay, I'm sorry. My name is David Lyon. I'm the newest trustee.
David,
Welcome.
Hi.
my name is Dennis Bergeron.
Hey, Dennis.
Tim Simpson.
Bruce Reed.
Mike Bailey.
Bob Cameron?
Eric Gould,
Jeff Hanna.
Matt Wade.
I'm Mike Broadbent, superintendent.
Welcome
Welcome aboard.
Are we gonna test him now on the name?
You have to always look at the minutes. Okay, so we're at, we're in new business right now, and we're talking about the Lake Auburn water protection.
I'll try to go quickly here. So this is just an FYI, next month at your June meeting, every year this board appoints one member to the Lake Auburn Watershed Protection Commission. Two of the positions are at-large members, one position is a trustee representative. The current position for this year that's up for renewal is an at-large position. I do have a volunteer form posted on our website. The current appointment is Camille Parrish. She's serving currently as the chair of the commission. She is interested in renewing. She's already submitted her paperwork. So I will have her application and any others that we receive available for you in June. And we'll have to make an appointment. So that's that.
Okay, great, thanks. You've got another item here that doesn't show up under new business, but it's the Garfield
Yeah,
access road.
I meant to put that on the front of the agenda, but I did get it in my memo, and I think we've discussed that, and I think we're settled there, but that was the discussion there.
So, ready for old business?
Yep.
Okay.
SCADA agreements, so as you all know, a few months ago, we sent the city of Lewiston a notice of breach for the 90-day cure pertaining to our interlocal agreements for SCADA. The 90-day cure period is going to mature June 22nd. I have not received any formal or written responses from Lewiston regarding this. They have done some work to, their technician is now serving on call. They have been cross-training, but they have not acknowledged the notice of breach or some of the contractual conditions that we're asking for a cure on. So in preparation of that, to the end of the 90-day cure period, I'll be working with our legal counsel to have a notice available. So when this does reach that 90-day, what's then? You know, officially our interlocal agreements for SCADA are now terminated. This is the following proceeding. So I will be working on that to get those drafted. I can send those out as an FYI to the board, but that's the procedure. I'm hopeful that we'll receive something. We might want to work on language too, that if they do send us something, that we could extend the cure period until the board has had a chance to read whatever response we get. So when I have more information, I'll forward it, but that's where we're at with that.
A question. I know you just said that they committed a technician for some on-call duties. That's happened in the past, but that's fallen off frequently.
Well, they have not been on call for UV for 4 years now.
Okay.
So they were paying for our technician to do the double duty. So this is the first time in a very long time that they've been serving on call.
Okay.
So he has been cross-training and he has been involving himself in the SCADA at UV. The technician is fine. He's a good guy, he does a good job. It's just having him get allocated the time to do that has been the problem.
Yeah.
So I think there's been progress, right? The guy has been coming, he has now do the on-call. Mike mentioned these other contractual issues, right? So he doesn't have the appropriate certification to turn, if he has to turn off a piece of equipment, he can't turn it back on, even if he comes and fixes it. He doesn't have a water operator license. And there's a number of items in there that they need to fulfill. But I think if we even had a plan that said this is when these things are gonna happen, I think I would be a lot more comfortable with that. And then the last thing I would say is they're well aware of this. the city manager and I met with the mayor, the council president, the new city administrator, and the deputy who's been acting city administrator the first week in May, about a whole range of city issues. But whenever we have these meetings, I check off my water district boxes and brought several water district issues to their attention. So they're well aware that this is going to expire, and they say that they're going to remedy this, but we'll see what happens by the end of the period.
So you're going to be working with Mike Hodgins to
Draft
have
up,
something?
yep, kind of a two-option approach to, you know, if we do receive something, you know, we would probably look to extend the cure period, or two, if we don't receive anything by the cure date, you know, a procedural letter on how we move forward.
Okay, and we'll be meeting again on June 18th, so that'll be 4 days, and give us time to actually take any action if we need to.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Water quality study, we have been working with CDM Smith. We've got a proposal, scope of work to complete this study. Now this is a study to look at the raw water quality in Lake Auburn, to look at where it's trending, look at projections on particularly when we need to look at filtration and other options. Again, we worked with all staff and including Lewiston superintendents to help develop this scope. I did apply for a grant for the Auburn Water District for our portion of the cost of this. I should be finding out soon as to whether we get that grant funds, but we are budgeted for this work. As this progresses, we will need a formal memorandum of understanding to split the cost of this study with Lewiston, so I'll have to work on that. But that's where we're at with that water quality study. It's progressing good. I think we have a good solid scope. Now that we've got that finalized, I'll probably put that in the June packet so the board can see that before we move forward. So I'll have that next month. Roll right into water quality update, and we're running short on time. The water quality in the lake is looking good. There's a trend in your packets. You can see the turbidity is down below where it was last year. Anytime we're below 1 NTU, you know, the lake looks really good. Anytime you're down below 0.8 NTUs, you're well below the seasonal average for this time of year. And in fact, I think for the month, we average somewhere, you know, below a 0.6 NTU, which is really good. You can see on this trend when ice out occurred. Obviously, when the ice comes off the lake, it's more susceptible to wind and turbidity stir-ups. That's very typical for when the ice goes off the lake, and then it generally smooths out. You don't see those bumps anymore. So, but no, the lake water quality is looking really good. The only interesting factor is all this rain that we've been receiving. There's a lot of turnover in the lake. That means there's more water coming in and going out than normal. We do have the dam open right now, 225 turns, which is the max amount that we feel comfortable opening. But we have to keep the water moving because there's a lot of water coming into the lake. So to avoid flooding and other erosion issues with too much water, we have to keep it moving. So, but no, I actually think increased turnover in the volume of water in the lake is actually very good for us because it helps remove some of the phosphorus that may otherwise be held in the lake for longer periods. It increases turnover. It's good for us. So that's good there. Lakeshore Drive MPI project. That one, you know, I've been working on this one quite a bit this last month. As you know, we were awarded this grant through DOT to replace the culvert on Lakeshore Drive. Last year, back in July, I had sent Lewiston a letter to request them to agree to share the funding of this project with us to get this culvert replaced. They do have the money allocated, but it's been, you know, we've been trying to get this MOU established between the two of us. I had sent them a draft. After sending these packets out, I did get back from them. They had their city administrator sign the MOU. Unfortunately, right before they signed it, they modified it. And, you know, after having legal look at the modified language, we can't agree to sign it the way that it's modified. So we're gonna have to go back to the drawing board and get that so that, it's, you know, we need to be equal partners on this project. It's not the Auburn Water District doing this work. you know, we're equal partners on this. So, at any rate, that's where that's at. We're gonna be working with legal to make sure we're covered on our agreement, with an equal share.
So Mike, they didn't agree to half of the $750,000 we're responsible for?
Well, they did, but the way that they reworded the agreement is that it made it look like the district was the contractor and it required us to carry additional insurances as a contractor on the project and to indemnify Lewiston in the work, and it's like, well, we're equal partners, we're not the ones doing the work. This is gonna be put out to bid. You know, these insurance requirements are what we would put on the contractor who's doing the work, and then they would indemnify both of us. So it's just the nature of the way that it was kind of reworded, is just, you know, anyways. So
Thank you.
that's what we're working on.
Oh, back on the water quality update, about
Yeah.
the back page, the Salmon Point, the erosion issues at Salmon Point. Is
Yeah,
that a popular spot for fishermen?
Salmon Point is a popular spot for the fishermen.
And
but
is that the is
No. No,
is the fishermen trampling the vegetation that's causing the erosion?
no, this actually has nothing to do with fishermen whatsoever.
That's good.
This was just something our watershed manager discovered. It's actually beyond Salmon Point. There's a little cove beyond Salmon Point, and just natural erosion has occurred. There's a kind of some steep banks as it comes down to the lake. You know, you have one tree that gets uprooted, you expose soils. Next thing you know, the banks are caving into the lake. It's a very tough spot to get to. I can't mobilize equipment there right now, so we're actually working with the commission is working with Ty and Bond to come up with a scope of work to get this repaired. But it is fairly substantial. This isn't a small problem. This needs to be addressed. So we're actually meeting with some of the drinking water program folks from the state, and we're bringing down some of the regional coordinators for DOT, their environmental impact manager, and we're gonna be looking at this to see if there could be some state funding available to help address this, so.
Thank you.
That and some other problems.
Great.
Anything else? All right. This is the trustee open session. Are there any items that members of the board would like to bring up at this point? All right. Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
All right, meeting's adjourned. I did have a 5-minute recess in here to start the workshop at 5:05. Does anyone want water or anything?
Thanks. All right, we ready to start the workshop?
Yeah.
Okay. Mike's put out the district trustee goals that are underway. Who wants to start off?
So first, I appreciate Mike putting all this together, and in large part, I agree with the things that are on here. I've mentioned this before, and I think it's important for the trustees to have some understanding of procedurally what we're gonna do with these, and secondly, how we're gonna write these, because in large part, the bold heading is a goal, but there's no goal statement, and what's in here in large part is a update on the superintendent's progress towards achieving that goal. So I'll just, as a point of reference, I'll describe, because I think it's a good way of doing it, what the council did here this last year. So in the past, the city council had these two or three very flowery, amorphous goals, you know, do a good job responding to the citizens of Auburn, which are completely unmeasurable. And so the council this last year took a different approach, and we have way more defined list of goals for the city manager, and the goal is defined and they're all measurable, right? So, you know, I'll just pick one on here, like water system modeling. Mike will have to tell me a little more about what that is, but I'll just make up an illustrative example, right? We might say, well, like update terms and conditions, you know, the goal might be for the superintendent to provide draft updated terms and conditions for consideration by the board by whatever. And like with a city manager, some of these things they're all in quarters, right? We didn't get any more granular than that, but some were Q1, some were Q2, 3, 4, some of them were by the end, it was just this year to do them. So then what we do is every quarter, the city manager comes in and because of the nature of a lot of the goals, it's an executive session. We can decide whether that's going to be an executive session or a public session in this body, but he comes in every quarter and gives us a written progress report with all the goals and says, this is where we are, you know, I've achieved these 5, these 3 are in progress, I'm this much done, this one was supposed to be completed in Q2 and I didn't get it done and here's why, but I'm gonna get it done by the end of the year or whatever. It gives us an update. So that's sort of some thoughts on this. I like the goals. I do think one of the things that we need to add on here is an analysis, a rate analysis, or we might call it something different, but we need to do some planning around looking down the road about when we think we're gonna need rate increases and what our strategy around that's gonna be. So I guess, Dennis, my point would be that I would want to spend a little time in the workshop talking about what these are, make sure all the trustees we all come to an agreement on what the goals are, and then perhaps a little bit about what the expectation is and less about an update about the work that's been going on with these.
So Jeff, when you say expectations, expectations as in a measure of time or expectations as?
Well, it's typically an expectation of completion.
Okay, but not specifying that, for example, facility replacement here is a 5-year goal. So not specifying a timeline or just?
Well, to me, that's way too far out for this, right? I think right now, I know, we've talked about some of these things and Mike started a bunch of this because they're clear goals.
Right.
But, the facility planning that's being done, right? You might say that you want a facility assessment with, includes a needs analysis and high-level expectations of a facility, and we want that completed by whenever, right? It could be a month or a quarter or something, because as these things build up, part of Mike's working with these is not only going to be I got to get them going, is how do I prioritize and schedule this to get this done by whatever time frame we have. And to be fair about it, there's quite a few goals that the city council has for the city manager that are this fiscal year, because it's really a lot of internal moving parts, as long as we got it by the end of the year. And then he said, he put some of them on as, earlier than the end of the year, because that's how he's planned it out.
Okay, anybody else?
I mean, on a personal note, my objective is to make sure that we support you folks to the best of our ability. So if you come back and you identify certain goals, we need to, as far as I'm concerned, kind of figure out how does that happen, where does it happen, what's the time frame that happens, and does it support your needs long-term?
I was wondering about some of the things in here, in particular, the facility is, I'm not sure when that's going, how that's gonna happen. It seems like that might be a long-term thing.
Well, I think you break it up, right? To me, the only goal, as a trustee right now, the only goal I have regarding facilities is a needs assessment. Because I don't think we can do anything more until we see that, right? And, because we don't know, we really need to understand what the district's needs are for a facility. And then the next piece, right, once we understand that is, can you renovate this facility to meet that requirement or not? Right, so Tim's involved with the public safety building, and, you know, we've done these for a bunch of other city projects where, you know, I was on the building committee for the sheriff's facility, and to me, that's where it starts out, and I think that's where Mike's been headed, engaging a contractor to do that needs analysis and at least give us a baseline of looking in the future, what do we need, and depending on how that comes out, then we're gonna have to set other goals and expectations. You know, it may be we say to Mike, we get this needs analysis, and we all look around and go, there's no way in hell we're doing that where we are now. That would be a different goal going forward than saying, okay, well, maybe we can renovate this place, and the next step might be, what's cost comparison, modeling between building new and renovating. That make sense?
Total, yeah. And it's just one good example, but, yeah.
One thing that would help for me, if I may say this, you know, I appreciate Jeff's context, because I didn't really have any to throw these goals together. It's not something the districts have ever done before, at least since I've been here. So I was kind of shooting from the hip on how to lay these out. It does get a little confusing on what's a water district goal, what's a sewer district goal, what are shared things, and I would just ask that this board seems to be moving ahead at a faster rate and on a different trajectory than the sewer board with this, and then it would be helpful if they were both on the same page as far as if this one is going to be setting up quarterly discussions of goal. Maybe those are joint meetings of the two boards to talk quarterly on goals.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
That will help.
Totally in favor of that.
I guess maybe we should think about what the period is we're doing this, because I was sort of thinking we're working on this, some of them might start, but to me, you do this on your fiscal year because it lines up with your budget and your work plans and those things, and, you know, we haven't done this before, but I think there's lots of advantages to the district to do it, but I'd be happy if we had this set up, ready to go, and for the next, when we go into our next budget year, January, go, okay, here's our goals for this year.
Yeah, no, totally. I think this is great. I just want to make sure that, you know, if one's going to do it, the other one needs to do it too, and that we're aligned.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
of the overlap. I think that's a great point, and I'd certainly be open to having a combined list of goals that the two boards agreed on and getting updates together.
We almost have to.
How many members are there on the school board?
7.
5.
Wow. There's 7 trustees, currently only 5 appointments.
So we could
Well-
be here.
There's 6 appointed, one hasn't come, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we just made another decision last night because he has never come to a meeting.
Right.
He's now missed
7. I thought we said
4
less.
or 5, I think it was.
Right.
Okay. Oh, we could host that here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. And they're the night, they're on
Tuesday.
Tuesdays, the day before this, so you could have a joint meeting once a quarter or something.
Yeah, it's not too clumsy. Good recommendation.
I like the idea of kind of pairing it around, around the annual budget. As I look at this, many of these things are underway now. You know, the first one, water quality assessment, we just reviewed it on our monthly meeting. And that's a work in progress, that's gonna happen. Whether we get to $30,000 or not, it's already budgeted and we're doing it. You know, water system modeling, we haven't talked about that, so that certainly could be, I guess I'd go back to you, Mike, is this a 2025 project, or is it, when would we
I
want
would
to
like,
have
this is,
done?
yeah, good point. I would hope that we would be in a position to have the scope developed for this, potentially funding to do this next year. That'd be great. It's definitely needed.
Yeah, I wouldn't put anything on here that's not gonna happen. If it's not happen, if there's no expectation by the trustees that the superintendent and the staff is gonna do something that in FY '26, don't even put it on here. Put it on here, because you're gonna update these every year.
Right, so he is saying that this is gonna be in 2026.
Yep, that's
We
fine.
want it on there.
Yeah,
Okay.
and to the point, you have a good point, Bruce, that we ran into this with the city too. A quarter or a third of the things on Phil's scorecard, on his goal thing, are stuff that was already going, and everyone's gonna have that, because we're not
Right.
starting from new.
Right.
And, you know, he might get this, which one did you just, the water quality assessment strategic plan. Conceptually, that might come in before the end of the year. If it does, there'll be that's another one of these things like the facility, that's got a lot that has to be done. We just move on to whatever the next goal is. And it comes out of that, if it's done before the end of the year.
You had mentioned rate strategy. I don't see how we can do rate strategy until we put the new meters in and see what we're going to be realizing for an increase in revenue with the. Because if all of a sudden you start to plan rate increases and we've already had a 10% automatic rate increase just because we put a new
Yeah.
water meter in, we're gonna have some upset customers, we're gonna have too much revenue coming in for what we need, we're gonna be in trouble.
Yeah,
So I don't know how you do that, you know.
So I think that, I think there's still things that we can do there, right? Because there's different ways to do a rate increase. We need to think about that. There's, the current, I don't remember what the percentage is, Michael knows off the top of his head, 1% or 2% or something you can do for a year without doing a rate case. It currently has a 3-year cap, but there's legislation, who knows what'll happen in the legislature to lift that, to just allow you to do it. So I think there's some things to get ready for this about what are the methods that you can use. I don't think there's harm in modeling this out now, because you can plug that number in, but in the year I've been on the board, a little more than a year now, there's been all this swirling around about, well, we might have to do rate increases, but we haven't done anything to get ready, model that out. When you pull the trigger, it's gonna be highly dependent on the meters.
Right, right.
But I think we should start getting the trustees ready for how that's done.
As somebody who's been through a lot of rate cases, there's two parts. And the first part is the numerator, right? That's the, what are we projecting as going forward costs? And then the second part is the denominator, which is what we'll get from the improved billing system. So we can get started on the going forward revenue, the revenue needs,
Yeah.
revenue requirements.
Yeah.
With the projects that we see coming
Yeah,
forward.
to figure out over some period of time what we think the expenses are gonna be.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good point.
You know what, this is an interesting point. In the last 5 years, the ideology of the board and how to handle our rates and revenues has changed. So 5 years ago, the district had raised the rates to allow for available cash on hand to fund capital projects. And we had been doing so for quite some time, building that cash balance to fund our capital work every year. 2 years ago, the board did not want to do that any longer. And they did not want to use that model, and they wanted to bond money to fund capital projects. So they bonded $2 million. So that got us $2 million in the bank. But the way that our rates were structured at the time, we already had the cash to fund the capital work, which has put us in a position for the last 4 years where we had the cash built into the rates and we bonded the $2 million. If you notice on the financial reports, we have close to $4 million sitting in the bank. Prior to that, the last rate increase, at the time of the rate increase, we barely had enough to fund, 90 days cash, 60 days cash on hand, because we were just about out of money. So that's when we raised the rate. So that's why I think we've been kind of swirling around on different things and ideas. But again, as part of the goals, the ideology of the board on how you want to fund your annual projects and to plan for these things, whether that be through rates or through bonding. Again, it's hard to shift if you've been doing it one way for a while and now you switch.
Yeah.
It's not something you want to be switching strategies. I mean, sometimes you
Right,
have
so-
to, depending on interest rates and stuff, but
So what I hear you saying, Mike, and I agree with this, is we should have a goal on here to establish a capital funding strategy,
yes, yep,
right? Because there is two ways to do this, and another time over a beer, I'll explain to you just using cash, the problem Maine Waste to Energy got themselves into by not bonding, and it scared the shit out of you. But it's, if you manage it right, you can do it either way, but we should have that as a goal and say, here's our strategy. Are we gonna write a check for these capital improvements, or are we gonna bond?
Just from my own knowledge, do we not take on any projects because of the lack of funding? Or do we just kind of balance out what we have for projects matched to our labor force?
the latter answer. I mean, generally, we know what we're gonna be doing for projects next year. We work on that towards the end of, say, 2025. What are we gonna need for capital funding for 2026? And then we try to ensure that we have, whether that be through rates, we have enough cash in the checking account to pay for this, or we say, hey, we need to bond next year to fund these capital projects. So in the past, they had kind of run with that ideology that you raised your rates to a certain point, so you have enough X amount of cash to just fund your projects every year. The problem really hit, and maybe this is where you would get this insight through the cold beer, is that when inflation really hit 4 years ago, I mean, 5 years ago, we were replacing pipe for $60 to $100 a foot. Matt, where are we? $400 a foot?
Yeah.
So the cost of doing business has drastically changed in the last 5 years. Without that bond, we wouldn't be able to do the projects this year. So it was good that they did bond that $2 million, but again, it's a.
Right, but it's a whole different, right, it's a whole different way of looking at it, and in some ways, we have a capital improvement plan, some things in here, but we don't really have that. So I don't think that we should be doing projects looking forward, going, well, we got this much staff and we got this much cash on hand, let's do these projects. The trustees should be deciding and do like a 5-year capital plan. That's what we do at the city, and when we adopt it, we just adopted this one for the next 5 years, you're not locked into it, and then we decide what we're gonna bond that year, and we split, we have now, they didn't do this in the past, we have operating capital, and we have bonding capital, and we have a policy that says, what's the tipping point, right? So we should, this capital funding strategy should look at that, right? We should come up with a plan, say, how do we wanna do this? What's gonna be in operating capital, what's gonna be in bonding? And we should have a capital plan in there where Mike and Matt are looking out going, okay, over the next 5 years, these are the things, because we're gonna get into some potential big things here with facilities, with potential advanced water treatment, where we're gonna look out and we wanna have the structure set up and the process to do this, so as bigger projects come in, you know, the city's chasing money to do, expand water and sewer out South Main and Broad, right? It's a big project. So you wanna have these things on the horizon, because what you don't wanna do is have Phil Kroll come calling Mike someday, go, hey, Mike, I got $9 million, let's do this job, and Mike going, holy crap, I don't have the people or the time, and when are we gonna do this stuff, right? So, I think that all goes into it. But the goal right now, I think, is just, what's our strategy gonna be, right? And what's the process we're gonna use? Let's get that identified, and then we can start filling it in.
Jeff, our timing of work on our infrastructure under the streets is often timed with the city when they're doing work. How far out realistically, when the city often puts project off for another year, how far out realistically is it for us to plan our budget and our projects
Right.
relative to the city? 5 years, 2
So-
years, 3 years,
Wow.
1 year?
Well, in a wonderful world, this would be very easy to answer. You would say, well, DOT's got a 7-year work plan, the city's got a 5-year plan, I'll just use that. Except every year it changes, right? It's not like lots of new things are getting added, but typically there's not enough funding to do all the things you wanna do, so the plan kind of pushes down the road. I will say that to the extent they can get contractor availability, DOT tries to stick to their work plan. And I've had this conversation with the city manager, Mike's brought this up and Matt before, about the city's a little loose when they do things, right? So we can improve on that. We've just done this whole, completed you guys probably saw the street scan, looks like a big Google camera thing on the top of a car, drove all around the city. It's gonna take 3 months to crunch the data, but we're gonna have a way better assessment. And I think, even though they may shift a little, I think that will really help the water district, because they're gonna be able to look at that list with the city and say, okay, here's our prioritized list of how we're gonna do these roads.
When you say assessment, it's of quality of the road, structure.
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
road. Okay.
yeah, exactly. It took pictures of the road and crunches all the.
Pothole that consumed the car and that.
Exactly.
I just want to observe that the construction cycle is one thing to try to manage, but as we talk about this water quality assessment plan, we're talking about a potential big capital expenditure for a different way of treating the water, which is something that has to be planned for, and probably the water quality assessment is the first step in getting to that.
Absolutely.
So that's, that, I don't know if that's so you look at that as a goal. The big goal is, do we need to change the way we do things or not? The first step is this. The other one is the facility. That's a thing that the district hasn't had to do for a long time. That's I don't know how many years that is, but the first step is getting an assessment of the facilities and what else is out there, what are the options. We didn't talk about that document today.
I don't know. It's all right.
That's all right. And we talked about what would it take to make this place better, but that's compared to what are the alternatives about other potential sites. So that's kind of a near-term part of the ultimate facility goal, but.
And so, to me, the capital strategy is the structure and the process you're gonna use, all right? So we're gonna have this goal about doing a needs analysis of the facility. We're gonna have a goal about the water quality. We're gonna come out of those, we're gonna have information, and we're gonna say, okay, at some point, you're gonna say, we're gonna plug in a new facility. It doesn't matter what it is, renovation or whatever, and here's what we're gonna do, and that's gonna be in this year. But we should be putting in that capital plan equipment replacement, if it's above your threshold of operating capital, so that the trustees can look at this and say, okay, we got all this equipment to replace, maybe we got facilities we gotta do, we're doing water meters, whatever they are, you know, and you're looking out 5 years so you can plan on this stuff, because that's gonna help inform your expense side about how you're gonna generate revenue. And then you would just, each year when you do your budget, you would say, okay, this is the piece, we're gonna do this year, or, you know, sometimes, like, not every piece of equipment Public Works asked for this year got in the capital plan, because there wasn't enough money to do it, right? So, I'm saying let's get a structure and a strategy around how you fund it, how you plan for it, and then we'll start plugging stuff into it. But we don't have that today. We just do it on an annual budget cycle. I mean, I get it that Mike and Matt in their head are thinking about all these things going on. But I think from an operational standpoint, it's helpful if you have this, because they can come in and, okay guys, here's the capital plan, this is where we're going, and I gotta have money to do this.
No, I actually don't prefer to do it the way we do it.
Glad we're having this discussion.
This is the way it's been done, and I'm trying to fall into these shoes and like, why did they do it this way? You know, and it is hard when you run into all these, well, I got like 5 vehicles next year that need to be replaced, you know.
Yeah, maybe you have a map in your head, maybe you have it on a computer somewhere, but I don't know, and I know it's not public knowledge, but the age of pipe on said street here, said street. You guys know where it's, okay, this pipe's really tender, we need to do this one next, when's the road due to be paved? You kind of know, because you lived and breathed it, but we don't know, and I don't know if there should be kind of a hierarchy, or you have one in your head, or, you know.
We actually did a water system capital improvement plan back in 2018, 2019, where they looked at our entire infrastructure, prioritized replacement of pipe. So we do have that for reference.
Okay.
So when we do get, we meet with the city, we see their 5-year capital improvement plan, and we can look at that and go, oh, I know all the streets where I've got the old cast iron pipe, this section of lowering is in this is supposed to be done first, and we can then prioritize, like, okay, well, we're gonna have about $1 million next year, let's pick off as much of this as we can. That's kind of how we run now, I do
But
definitely.
let's flip that around and say, when you look at that, here's what they did in 2018, we should have carried that on every single year, right? And you have a 5-year, and this year you authorize what you're gonna do this year in the budget, and then you push it out at 5 years.
So again, from my own knowledge, our assets as far as motor vehicles, equipment, are they aging? Are we in pretty good shape? Just a general idea.
I think generally we're in good shape. We did forego some vehicle replacements through the last couple of years, which have now kind of bottled us into next year and the year after. We're gonna have more than we've had for a while, because we forgave some replacements. Generally, we keep for 10 years.
Okay.
That's been our past practice.
So not based on hours or mileage? or-
No, it's, if they're in really good shape and they're at 10 years, well, we've kept them for a couple more years. But we're gonna be running up against it next year. We're gonna have 2 or 3 that are due.
And just my own knowledge.
Yep.
Yes.
So if I may, like in my experience coming from the water district, we had something similar to what you're describing, Jeff. You would have goals per your budget, which would tie into your operations, which then would tie into capital. And amongst those goals, you would hit on, water quality would be in there as well, staffing, fleet, wastewater would be in there, water would be in there, and you would have goals, and it's essentially a roadmap for you, and kind of benchmark and see how you performed that year. It's a transparent way for not only the district, but also our ratepayers. They can kind of see what our procedure is, what our policy is, where their rates are going, what projects they're funding. And it gets a little bit blurry. I know we deal with multiple different entities, like DOT, Public Works, the city, right? And schedules are always changing. And it's hard to handcuff yourself to one person, because while a road may only last 10 years, then it needs to be reconstructed or rehabbed. We have water mains that could last 50, 60, 70, 80, up to 100 years. And you may not have a water main break on a main that's 100 years old, but you may have a water main break, several water main breaks on, mains that you installed 20 years ago. So, there's a lot of different things that you gotta balance. And having a roadmap and projects ready to go in a 5-year plan gives you that flexibility to adjust.
So in your 5-year plan, you would have large replacements of pipe or infrastructure. And to me, things that you would do because they're emergent, okay, now we had a break here, so we're gonna replace 400 feet of pipe. You would have in your operating capital every year an appropriation for that, right? Because you don't know exactly what it's gonna be, and it's like, especially if we start talking about bonding, a year ago, we started having this discussion at the city council because they have bonding equipment. So they're bonding police cars.
Oh.
Right? And they're not bonding long-term, they get like a 3-year bond or a 4-year bond, and they're bonding mobile data terminals to go in the police cars because they're in there. And that makes 0 sense, right? So you have a policy and you say certain types of things, like maybe here, pickup trucks. You might not put pickup trucks in your capital budget, you might just appropriate in your operating capital every year a certain amount of money for equipment under a certain threshold, and you still get approval for it, but you're not, especially if you go down I think we should go down the bonding road on bigger projects, but you don't want to be bonding everything because it costs you too much money, it costs you too much in interest.
And one other piece is looking at staffing, understanding, how many resources we have at hand, to be able to achieve these goals that we do set.
Well, yeah, especially if your everyday operations, you're gonna have to have a certain amount of staff that's gonna be in your budget, but if you're looking down the road at these goals and you say, well, okay, guys, if you say you wanna do that, we can't do that with what we have. We're gonna need 2 more people, we're gonna need 3 pieces of equipment or whatever, right? Because if you don't have these things, you get to that point, you go, money's tight, we can't do it, we'll kick the can down the road. And that's got all its own problems.
I think that was a big misunderstanding of the districts previously, 5 to 6 years ago. The water board really, they wanted to get a lot of work done. They wanted to, let's replace 5 miles of pipe a year. And it's like, what doesn't come down to a factor of money. You can't just give me more money and expect that I'm gonna get, because I have the more money, I can do 5 miles this year. It comes down to, there's only so many of us sitting here
Right.
managing, overseeing, organizing, these projects. I can't even, there's no amount of money that you give me that I would be able to physically be able to do this. You need
Correct.
2 or 3 other people sitting here to help manage that level of projects, which that, money does fix that, but if you don't want to increase the staffing, then I just can't do that with more money.
Right,
So that was a past.
so from an operational standpoint, as a superintendent, if that's what the trustee said, in our capital plan, we're gonna replace 5 miles of pipe a year. You're gonna say, okay, I can do that, and here's what it's gonna take. Right?
You're gonna contract it out.
No, or whether you contract or hire staff, whatever.
Expense department. I mean,
If you can't
What are
do
you
it
saying,
with
you
what
can't
you
do it,
got.
just more money, you're gonna have to hire more bodies
Yeah.
and more vehicles,
Or
more
a
trucks.
contractor.
Yeah.
To
Right.
do it for you.
Yeah, however.
Right.
Yeah, they'll tell us what they think the best way to do it is, but that's why you need these goals, right? Because there was a lot of discussion about we wanna replace more pipe, but that never really happened.
But we just don't have,
Don't have
they
the
would
capability.
allocate the money to do the pipe, but we didn't have the people to do the work.
Right.
And it's not, and it's not about contracting, it's managing the contracts.
Somebody's gotta do the bids,
Right.
somebody's gotta be the project manager,
Yeah.
somebody's gotta,
You know, and it's enough, it's, you know, it's already enough work to do that mile a year, managing those bids and managing those projects. And then even if you award the project, even if you hired an engineering firm to do that, they're doing that work in town. It's just like Center Street's not our project in town, right? But guess what? We're wound right up into it because everything we have is in that street. You know, Lewiston replacing the water main in Auburn is not our project, but guess what? We're wound right up in that project because they're hitting things, they're having calling for extra dig safes, they're calling, you know, it's a draw on us, and then all of a sudden it's like, how are we in the world gonna be able to get over there and replace the pipe on Loring, because we're over here doing all these things?
right.
Because all the work going on, you know, and that was the frustrating thing in the past, of trying to balance that, but,
But you're not saying you're understaffed.
I don't
Oh,
see
they're
that.
understaffed.
I think
Tim,
we-
if we're being honest, we are.
Okay.
You know,
That's,
we have some staffing deficiencies, we've come a long ways, but we still have some deficiencies.
okay.
Mike, what's the
You know, the old-
ballpark
So,
cost
so
to
that should be a
replace
goal as
pipe?
well, to identify staffing levels.
I agree completely,
It's in
Kevin,
here.
there's a staffing thing on here,
Yep.
because we've heard this before. Right, and
So being mindful of our workshop time here, good first step here, but would the next step be to take a look at these things that look like appropriate goals and try to, for you guys to try to put down what you think are realistic, like checkpoints, time boxes? Does that
yeah, I
sound like
think,
it's
I think you're right, Dennis, I
concrete
think
move?
you take these, like the staffing one, right? From a trustee standpoint, what we should be saying on here is that we want the superintendent to do a staffing plan that takes whatever, we can think about it, into consideration, you know, a staffing plan that covers the next 5 years or something, and we'd like him to have that for us by, if this was the start of the fiscal year, we might, and we might say by June 30th, the end of the second quarter or something. Right, and then, that's what Mike and Matt need for a goal, I think, and then they're gonna come back and go, okay, folks, to achieve that, this is what I wanna do. I'm gonna contract with such and such a company to come in here and do this analysis for us, or whatever, and they'll figure out the details of how to get that done and let us know what they're gonna do, and then keep us updated as they go along on what they're doing to achieve this, and try to get it done in whatever time period the trustees wants to get the work done.
And we should ask them how long a time period we think they need to do this.
Well, yeah,
That's what I'm asking.
there's a
That's
conversation
what I'm-
around that,
you
right.
know, Pencil in what you think works.
And listen, again, for some of these things, if we don't have a particular need that we want it done, like, let's say we're just talking about next budget year. If we don't have a need that says we need this done by the end of Q1, just say in fiscal year X. And then Mike, they'll work out internally amongst all the other stuff they gotta do and tell you, okay, I'm gonna get this one done in Q2, or this one's not gonna be done until Q4. If we don't have a particular need to get it done by the date, we can just say, these goals gotta be accomplished in this year, and they'll tell us how they're gonna do that.
Yeah, definitely think we can put some order to this and polish this based off of the comments tonight.
There's a lot, there's a lot in there that's underlined.
Yeah,
Right, so,
Are we asking too much of you too quick?
no, I don't think so.
All
This
right.
is, I mean,
You
this
work on it
isn't,
tonight?
this isn't,
But he, I got a little league ball game to get to.
you never know, you never know. But yeah, no, I don't think that's too much at all.
Do we wanna focus on any specific, ones of these that we want to have done sooner than others?
I think it's up to you two to prioritize.
Yeah, I think the ones we're currently working on, Bob, I think you've kinda, I gave you this updated one this month, the underlined stuff is the stuff we've been kinda working on since the last meeting. We'll continue to do that, but we'll put a little bit more structure to this and kinda get some expected completion dates or projected, we'll come up with something and take a look at that.
Yeah, in watching the last few meetings, how urgent is the IT situation?
That's-
Hasn't been an IT.
That's not drastically urgent, that's not
Okay.
high on our priority list at this time, it is a goal for, next year, we were hoping to have that one in place.
Okay.
Kind of big ones for me is talking about the capital improvement plan as well as the staffing. I think we really need to ensure that we can get done what we have in front of us right now at this very moment, which is gonna play a role in the capital improvement as the district grows. We take on more miles of main, more pump stations, looking at potentially treatment technique change at the UV plant. That's all added staffing. And the more we add, we either got to grow with the system or something's gonna be different.
So we started this whole conversation with, we probably should involve the sewage trustees as well. Would you like to do that sooner versus later, or do you want to wait
I
until
think,
you come back?
I mean, you've got two members here who are also on the sewer board, Bob and Dennis.
Okay.
The sewer board has this under old business every month, it's coming up on their agenda for the remainder of the year.
Okay.
The comments I get from tonight's meeting, I will bring forward onto it's the same gold sheet that we have for the sewer district. I might take some work to separate these two, just so it's a little unclear. I tried to put water sewer, I'll work on performing that, but I'll bring these forward to the sewer board. I would just ask that as the year progresses and when we start to look to adopt these and set these as that the two boards be succinct and that they're both, following the same path. Because it would be awkward if one board wants me doing one thing and the other one doesn't want me doing that, just.
You don't want to start the conversation in October.
No, I'm just trying to keep them, and they haven't been objective to any of it, they put it on their agenda, but they wanna continue to see this, so.
so when do you think would be a next time to check in? You said we don't wanna start it in October, when would be a good time to?
Well, I mean, I don't know, maybe if we set for like a July workshop, July's not a great time to have one for meetings.
We're giving you
That's
the
up to you.
opportunity to check the timeframe boxes.
Yeah, but I mean-
I think July would be fine, we can work on that,
Yeah.
right, to have some more structure to this for the July meeting.
Yeah, I think we just avoid the holiday sector of the month.
Yeah, we're not
Well,
till, we're not till the third week.
And just to point out, some of these goals aren't really for Mike and Matt, like revise and update the water district trustee bylaws, right? If we set that for a goal, I'm assuming Dennis is gonna create a committee, or we can all work on it together or something. That's really a trustee activity, right? So they're not just things that'll affect the day-to-day operation.
No, wasn't Bilodeau working on trustee bylaw?
No, that was, I know Jason Pauline had brought that up, we had brought it onto our agenda a couple of times for trustees to forward any comments on the bylaws to him. I don't believe he got any, we didn't really start any formal action I know we've commented on different things that are kinda like, hey, we need to clean this language up, fix this, but we haven't like formalized that and started redlining or anything like that.
Or maybe it was the
It was the
watershed.
bylaws for the protection of Lake Auburn that they had
That's
worked on
what it was,
previously,
okay.
so that was.
Because I attended those meetings
Yeah.
over at the airport, yeah.
And the discussion in this committee was more about getting training on the bylaws because people haven't been through
I
it step
see.
by step.
Yeah.
And a rewrite gives you the opportunity to go through them as a board
Mhm.
and look at each one.
And the sewer
Yeah,
district doesn't
we've
have
had-
bylaws.
We've had some, in the last year and a half, some provisions in the bylaws that had to be exercised that hadn't never been used before, and we found out it doesn't work real well. We've got to find a better way.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Comment from the public?
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is there any carryover of the lead and copper assessment that was a big topic from 18 months ago to a year ago? You talked about it at every meeting, hired a couple of special people, but there were phases in that, and only the first phase was reportable by last October. Will it be a further carryover either on an operational or a capital level for that large undertaking?
So we do have in our budget this year $100,000 for LCRR to continue to work on that project. You know, the big hurdle, as you said, was last October to submit our inventory.
Yeah,
We did have no lead services, no galvanized requirement replacement. We do now have 10 years to continue to work on the inventory.
that was my question, was directed to
To continue
this
to do this. So
prospective planning.
So we've allocated $100,000 this year to do investigations, to continue to work on that inventory. And I think if we continue to do that over the next couple of years, we'll satisfy the needs of the inventory, we'll be able to meet those requirements. So we're well on track.
That's a good example, though, of a potential goal to say, you know, we'll complete X percentage of the LCRR inventory this year, because there's always gonna be competing priorities, and you guys can come back to the Board of Trustees and say, okay, listen, yeah, I get it, you want me to do this, but you have this goal, and I'm trying to accomplish getting this done this year, and, right, it's built into your operational plans.
Yeah, so Steve, what we looked at, the 100,000, we're gonna be targeting the unknown. And then our strategy is looking at the water meter replacement. We're not just gonna be replacing meters. When we go, enter into contract with a consultant firm, if we do go that route, we anticipate having them collect information on the service line material on the residents that we don't have currently. So we want to use that 100,000 to try to sprinkle in between, you know, the capital projects that we have right now, of going out there and targeting the ones that we don't have on our side.
So,
That way, we're not throwing good money after bad, but we could capture that material when we do our meter change out.
and we're not having to create a new special project
It's
objective,
gonna be.
either capital or
The audit
operational.
strategy would that, if we do have a consultant go in, we're gonna have them gather this information for us while they're doing the meter change out. And that should take care of the majority of the unknowns that we have.
That also may get you over the potential unpleasant hurdle of homeowners who object to having
Correct.
district personnel
Yeah.
going into their homes for some specific targeted purpose of trying to stick us with a bigger bill because we've been running a UE around the meter.
Something to think of.
So you're saying that,
Really
I'm not looking for a part-time job.
so you're saying that because Bruce Reed didn't send in his pictures on his two properties?
You could be,
I'll do it before the next meeting.
Are we all set?
Shame me into it, Steve.
Got a ball game to go to?
Yes, yeah, yeah,
What are you, children?
yeah. I have a 8-year-old and 11-year-old.
What are they playing?
My little boy's playing Little League right now, baseball.
Suburban, Auburn Suburban?
No, we're in Wyndham, so he's playing in Wyndham. Yeah, well, I'm gonna be late anyway.
You're gonna be living in dark?
Eric and I were there last night.
Yeah.
No, we're
Pete.
my grandson and his son on the same team.
Oh, wow.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're playing in New Gloucester over at the field off of Penny
Oh,
Road.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice little field they have over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll share a little
You all set?
story. Yep. Oh, I'm sorry.
Good, Matt.
Good, thanks.
I don't want to hold
Motion
anybody up
adjourned?
for that.
No,
I'll
what's
wait
your
till it's
story?
adjourned.
Do we need one on this?
Yep.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
I'm over to adjourn?
Second.
In a second. All in favor?